and welcome to Low Vision Moments. It is the podcast all about those sometimes frustrating, potentially embarrassing, but often pretty comical things that happen when you are just going about your day with albinism. I'm Jennie Bovard, I'm your host, and this is episode number 43. This is a very special episode. We're going to be doing things a little bit differently today to celebrate International Albinism Awareness Day, and we are coming to you live from the Lighthouse Arts Centre here in Halifax, Nova Scotia. We are streaming on AMI's YouTube channel and on AMI Audio. And Thursday, June 13th, 2024, this day marks 10 years since the United Nations established International Albinism Awareness Day. And they did that to address legal, policy, and practical changes that are required to ensure the full and equal enjoyment of rights by persons with albinism around the world. That is a mouthful, but I am so excited to have my co-host Dave Brown here with me. Dave Brown is the host of Now with Dave Brown on AMI, and I couldn't be more happy to have you here with me.
Jennie, I am delighted to hang out with you this afternoon. You hung out with me all morning on my show. I'm happy to return the favor in the afternoon for such a wonderful day.
Now, over the next 2 hours, Dave and I are going to be joined by guests with albinism from around the world, from the UK, around the USA, and the Netherlands. We're going to discuss what International Albinism Awareness Day means to all of us. We're going to hear about the incredible work and the achievements that they've accomplished, and we're going to compare experiences because that's what we do on this podcast. And obviously, there are going to be some laughs along the way because that's also what we do on Low Vision Moments. To prove that this is a celebration, I have worn my best jeans, my nicest jeans. And Dave, you did too.
I did. They're brand new.
Yes. And we also have Outtacontroller here with us. They're the band behind the Low Vision Moments theme song, and they're going to be playing live with us throughout the show. So how exciting is that?
Little live music. I mean, that's how you know you're going to have some shindig good times in Halifax. You need live music.
Dave, I have to dive right in and ask you, what does International Albinism Awareness Day mean for you?
Jennie, I've been grappling with this for a couple of days because I wear albinism very proudly. But when you zoom out on a day like today and you consider the international and global context of the conversation, it's to find community with people through shared experience and shared barriers, but also considering the differences the different people with albinism experience around the world. And I'm cognizant of that when you and I use the word celebration, and I'm someone who likes to think about conversations about disability as somewhat uproarious and sometimes obnoxiously. I understand there's a real seriousness to the conversation today, and that's why the people that you've lined up to speak with today can really round out the perspective across all the points of contact. But what about you? What does it mean to you?
Well, I agree with you that there's a much bigger discussion to be had. There's still a lot of work to be done when it comes to the rights and just enjoyment of life for persons with albinism around the world. And in my case, I used to look at this day as something that was really for policymakers and for advocates and people sort of in positions of power who are out there doing amazing things to change policy, to make sure that people with albinism in certain parts of the world have safety and have access to the things that they need just to live life. But in recent years, I've come to understand that I've got a bit of a platform now. I didn't really feel like I had anything to say before. Like you, I sort of wear my albinism with a bit more pride. I lean into my albino identity, I guess, more so. And I think part of that comes with having had this podcast. So now that I get to have these conversations with you and to have them on sort of a stage where other people are listening, hopefully we're going to be able to demystify what it means to have albinism. And I think the more that we normalize things, the more that we're going to see the changes come.
That's an excellent word, demystify, eliminate the myths and share the stories of people all around the world.
Right, we're real people and we have real stories and each of our experiences are different. And again, that's what this podcast is all about, is looking at different experiences. And we mentioned before that it can really differ depending on where you live in the world. Here in Canada, I like to think that we've got it pretty good. You know, there's work to be done here as well. But when we, when we talk to people in other places, it gives me new perspective. That's part of what I love about doing the podcast. So I'd like to invite our first guests on. They are returning guests to the podcast. I'm so happy to have them. Cassandra Mendez and Casey Greer. These are two best friends, and they're also co-hosts of the Rare with Flair podcast. And with Rare with Flair, they are exhibiting that they are living their best lives. They're sharing their stories, but they're also raising awareness about a rare form of albinism. Albinism itself is quite rare, but Hermansky-Pudlak Syndrome is even more rare. And they share that they both have live with Hermansky-Pudlak Syndrome. Casey works with NOAA, the National Organization for Albinism and Hypopigmentation, and more recently, super exciting news, she has joined the ranks at Descriptive Video Works, and she is coming to us all the way from Tennessee, USA. Along with Casey, we have, of course, Cassandra Mendez, and Cassandra is an accessibility specialist joining us all the way from Ohio. Welcome back to the podcast, my friends.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
I have my co-host Dave here with me, and we're so excited to check in with both of you. So you both appeared on the Low Vision Moments episode titled Bad Medicine, and we kind of compared our experiences accessing medical care as people with albinism, and for you with HPS, with Hermansky-Pudlak Syndrome. We found out what the heck piss jugs on ice is all about and why that's something the two of you relate on. Maybe we'll get to that a little bit later. But I really would like to know from each of you, let's start with Casey. What does International Albinism Awareness Day mean for you?
Well, I really, first of all, would love to echo what both of you said, because you both said it so beautifully and eloquently. I love this day. I think International Albinism Awareness Day is a great day to spread awareness about albinism. I think there are so many misconceptions about albinism, especially in the media, and just so many people don't know what it is, or they think they know what it is and they have an idea of it and it's not that. I was excited when I logged onto Facebook this morning to see a lot of people sharing different facts and different things about it, and just to try to teach people more. But it's also just a great day to celebrate albinism, like you were saying.
And what about you, Cassandra?
Yeah, I would have to agree. I mean, you guys have really covered a lot of ground here. I think for me, it feels like a really special day to celebrate our community too, across the globe. And so I think a lot of us have experiences with albinism in a specific group we're part of. Maybe you're part of NOAA if you're in North America or in the United States. And that's fantastic. But this is a day where we really get to celebrate albinism across the globe and internationalize it, and also learn about people with albinism and their experiences in completely different countries, and also just appreciate our friends with albinism, like you guys. Thank you.
Oh. Well, I'm gonna admit something here. My geography is terrible, but Casey, you're in Tennessee, and Cassandra, you're in Ohio, right? How the heck did the two of you become such good friends?
So we both have Hermansky-Pudlak Syndrome, type of albinism, as you said earlier, Jennie, and we'll call it HPS for short. It's a bit of a mouthful. So there is there's a conference every year in Long Island, New York, for the HPS conference. And Cassandra and I both happened to go to the conference 10 years ago in 2014. And we ended up riding in the same shuttle from the airport to the hotel together and just hit it off immediately. And kind of the rest is history, but we met through our diagnosis.
Cassandra, could you tell us more about the Rare with Flair podcast and how you went from being friends that met in this sort of serendipitous way to coming up with the podcast, and why did you do that?
Yeah, I think it really wasn't something that we ever would have seen ourselves doing. And now we're 4 years into it, which is absolutely wild to think about. But Casey and I are about 5 years apart. So when we met about 10 years ago, I was 16 and she was 21. And at that time, that age gap was felt more. But there aren't that many people with Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome, frankly. And finding someone close to your age is not a high likelihood. So even though we were kind of in different life stages when we first met, we still continued to chat, and we would have these like hours long FaceTime calls a few times a year where we just would really get into it. We would talk about our vision and our health, and we found that we had a lot of similarities and differences, but in the ways that we owned our disability and wanted to participate in the world. And through COVID, everything stopped, and the two of us, we talked even more and we got even closer than we were before, where we were like truly best friends. And we joke about this a lot. I don't know if we would have started the podcast if the world had not shut down entirely and we had this thought of what else are we going to do, I guess. But Casey used to have a YouTube channel, and she once had me on her channel very graciously, and we did this kind of interview. And a lot of the comments were very kind and said, like, you guys have great energy. And that kind of got us thinking, like, what if we did a podcast?
And it's been such a great way for the two of you to raise awareness, but you do it in such a fun and conversational way. The topics that you discuss are really varied, and it's not all about albinism. It's not all about HPS. And I love your podcast. Before we move on any further, people should go and check it out. They can find it on all their favorite podcast platforms and at rarewithflair.com, right?
Yes.
So we have talked a lot about albinism already, and we've mentioned HPS, Hermansky-Pudlak Syndrome. I'd like to quickly give a rundown. Albinism itself, we haven't described what it is. Would you like to take a try at that?
Oh, Jennie, do you want me to give a crack like I tried this morning?
I would love it.
Do you want the scientific way, or do you want the way that I tell
want the
people in
Dave way.
public? Okay, so somebody approaches me in public. What is albinism? I try to keep it pretty straightforward. I don't have any pigmentation. My hair, as they can often tell, is all white. I am legally blind, and I'm incredibly light sensitive. That's the way that I try to lay it out as simply as possible without getting too deep into the science, unless there's follow-up questions.
It's a great description. The only thing I might add is that albinism is really rare. Here in North America and Europe, it occurs in 1 in 20,000 people approximately, and it's even more common in some places in the world. Some places in sub-Saharan Africa, it's I think 1 in 1,500 or something close to that number. Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome is even more rare, and I think, if I'm saying this correctly, albinism is sort of a symptom of HPS. Cassandra, would you do us the favor in describing a little bit about what Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome is?
Sure, yeah. So HPS is a very multi-system disorder. There are a lot of factors involved, but to keep it simple, like Dave did, we have albinism and a bleeding disorder. Everyone with Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome has these things. So we have some degree of varied pigmentation, but the results are the same. We have light sensitivity. A lot of us are legally blind or some degree of vision impaired. And so we have this bleeding disorder where platelets in your blood, they help coagulate if you cut yourself and you're bleeding, or something goes wrong in your body, your platelets will like come together in a little clump and help stop that bleeding. So all platelets normally have these little dots on them, and they look like chocolate chip cookies. But people with Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome don't have the little dots on our platelets, so they look like sugar cookies. Basically, that means we have a bleeding disorder and we have a propensity to bleed more. A lot of us also have additional autoimmune complications, and a good portion of us, depending on what subtype you have of Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome, end up developing pulmonary fibrosis, which is a terminal lung disease that involves lung scarring, and it doesn't really have a treatment or, I mean, much less a cure, except lung transplantation. So it's really important for us to raise awareness. I have a subtype that is like guaranteed going to get pulmonary fibrosis in my life. So, you know, we do a lot of research in our community to try and help find some sort of treatment that can extend our lives.
I can't thank the two of you enough for always bringing such a great way to educate. You do it in such an accessible way, and by that I don't just mean using cookies to help us understand, but that is a really great way to help us understand something like that. So I do appreciate it. And the two of you are going to be coming back and joining us for the bigger discussion about albinism experiences around the world. And I just want to thank you both for all of the awesome work that you do to raise awareness. Albinism and HPS are so rare. I don't blame people for not necessarily knowing or understanding. So what we're doing and what you guys are doing is just, it's key. So thank you. And we'll chat with you again in a few minutes, okay?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So Dave, I mentioned we're going around the world. We're going around the world. We're going to go across the pond now. And we're going to be speaking to someone in London. We're going to be talking to Kristina Venning-Rose. And Kristina Venning is actually co-chair at Albinism Fellowship UK. So I'm really, really excited to get another perspective. We've left North America, and as soon as we can get Kristina to join us, it's going to be another perspective, right?
It's fueling up the jet here, Jennie. I don't know, from Halifax, maybe we could take a boat out to London. I mean, I think that would still be a long one, though, even through the digital airwaves.
Right. So I think we've got Kristina here with us now. Kristina, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you well, thank you.
I see
Hi
you
there.
now. Hi, so good to meet you. Thank you for joining us for International Albinism Awareness Day on the Low Vision Moments podcast. I have my co-host Dave here with me.
Hello.
Hello. Do you know, I was so excited to be invited because I listened to you anyway. So I was fangirling all over it.
Oh, I'm so glad to meet you. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. That's what it's all about, is people like you who can relate and hopefully laugh along. So it's great to have you here. I want to get right into it. The big question, what does International Albinism Awareness Day mean to you, Kristina?
Well, in a light-hearted way, I prepared. So I have two kids, and I prepared them last night, and I said, okay, kids, what's happening tomorrow? And they were like, what? And I was like, it's all about me tomorrow. It's my day, and it's all about me, and you have to be really nice to me. And that's what it is in my household. But in the general kind of sense of International Albinism Awareness Day, it's for me, it's about community, and it's about going on social media and just seeing other people all around the world who you have a common, you have such a commonality, because albinism can be quite a lonely thing. And you can feel like you're the only person who experiences the things you experience. And the more you talk to other people and the more you connect, the more you realize that actually you aren't alone. There are other people who do the same things in the same way, who are as goofy as you, or who, I don't know, get into all sorts of scrapes. And for me, it's about community. And it's also about making people understand that we're not always portrayed in the media in the greatest way, but we are just normal people. We might look a bit different, but ultimately we're like everybody else. So I just think it's so important.
I think, Kristina, you hit on a lot of really important points there. I really like your initial explanation of this day is about us. It's about me. Treat me special. Make me breakfast in bed, whatever it is. I am on board for that. But you're so right about the community aspect too. Just having Dave here with me all day, like I've got a person here with me all day who is also complaining about the lights, who is also preparing when they step outside to face the sun, and having those considerations. And just we're the pale people in the room. It's nice to have another person here with me, and it just really is a big deal having that community. I'm really interested to know about the work that you get to do with Fellowship, Albinism Fellowship UK. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So we, compared to you guys in America and Canada, you have NOAA. We have the Albinism Fellowship, which is a tiny, tiny organization, and we're all volunteers. So we don't have any paid members of staff. But our remit, we cover the whole of the UK and Ireland, and our remit is about bringing people together. So it's about that I was talking about earlier on. It's about having that commonality. It's about having that community, and it's having that sense of not being alone, and that whatever you're going through, you can go through it with somebody else. I always say to new parents, so just before I got onto this call, we were hosting a Zoom session for new parents, which is something we do. So we had 15 families who have just literally got tiny babies who have albinism, and our aim was to kind of hook them together and hook them up. And I was just saying to them like half an hour ago, so we've had conferences, and my parents, I've been part of the Albinism Fellowship all my life. And when I was 18, I was at a conference and I met my best friend, Sarah, there. And we have both like had children, we've got married, she's got divorced, we've done everything, and we're friends because we're friends, but we have that albinism in common. So I know if I've had a bad day, or I've been walking down the street and someone shouted out, "Oh, look, there's an albino," I know that I can call her up and she'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But I just said to those parents, you know what, you guys, the best thing that you can do for your children is to find a Sarah. Everybody needs a Sarah in their lives, just because when you're growing up and you are the only person with white hair, you can feel really lonely, and it's hard. Like, it is hard. It has its challenges, and just everybody needs a Sarah. So that was kind of my message to them. So we do a lot of work with families just to kind of make sure that those early stages when parents are feeling really vulnerable and they've had this diagnosis and the parents have told them their children are blind and they'll never be able to see and they won't be able to go out in the sun and they won't have any, expectations are really low. We try and just squash all of that straight away and be like, do you know what? Your children can do whatever they want to do. So that's what we're all about. And for adults, we try and hook other adults up, and we run social events. Because we're a small country, we can do it. It's quite easy for everybody to get together in the same place. So that's they're kind of the main things that we do. It's all about community and getting people together.
Wow, I am blown away. I'm absolutely blown away. Number one, because you've answered all of the questions that I had, and you've done it in such a lovely way. I really wanted to know about, the importance of community and how can we set our kids up for success, whether the children have albinism or whether you're a parent of a child with albinism. You mentioned expectations, and I feel like if the bar had been set a little higher for me, I might have come out of my shell a little bit earlier, and having that sense of community is really empowering, wouldn't you say, Dave?
I think community is this amazing thing when you talk about shared experience and understanding, but I'm also so struck that for a few moments now in a couple different answers, people have talked about friendship and the importance of friendship and what it means to have a shared identity that helps you build a friendship. And that's something that is not lost on me, that so many times friendship starts at the community level, but that's where you can really help individuals gather and flourish together.
I really wish we had something in Canada that mirrors what you're doing out there. I just really commend all the amazing stuff that you're doing. And I hope that you're going to stick around with us here for a bigger conversation. We're going to bring in some more folks, and we're going to talk about those experiences and how they are similar and how they are different depending on where you are in the world. And it's really a treat because we have a bunch of different areas of the world represented here today. It's a really rare opportunity, I think, to be able to come together. I can't think of a time when I've had this many people with albinism sort of in the same room. And well, actually, I can. And it's only goal ball tournaments, but that's a whole different vibe. So let's bring back our guests, Casey and Cassandra, and they're going to be joining us for the bigger conversation. Welcome back, Casey and Cassandra.
Thank you.
Casey, Cassandra, I'll just introduce you quickly. We have Kristina Venning-Rose here, and she's chair of Albinism Fellowship UK. And their vision, which I love, it's so succinct and it just says so much. Their vision is for all people with albinism to have the opportunity to realize their full potential. That just says so much. And based on what she said, I mean, they're doing great work out there. Casey Greer and Cassandra Mendez, you two are two best friends and you're co-hosts of the Rare with Flair podcast. So welcome, everyone. I would like to get right into this discussion. You're all doing, like I said, really incredible things to empower people with albinism around the world and in your region and your communities. And you're doing that. You're empowering us by removing barriers and really raising awareness. Dave and I like the word demystify albinism to just sort of describe that. So I'd like to go around and ask each of you this question. If you could tell me about the experience or the moment when you decided to get involved, when you decided to start speaking up, whether it's in awareness, whether it's in the work that you've chosen to do, what was the moment or the experience when you decided, hey, I need to direct my attention here? Let's start with you, Kristina. Kristina, was there a moment when it all kind of clicked for you that you wanted to work in this kind of environment supporting people with albinism? I'm not sure if she can hear us. So Cassandra, why don't we skip over to you?
Sure. So I remember it was, all right, the year was 2012, I think. And I was, I think, 15. And I knew that I just wanted to be involved somehow in some kind of awareness work. I wasn't sure what that looked like, but I did know that NOAA, the National Organization for Albinism and Hypopigmentation, they serve the United States and Canada. I knew that they had a quarterly publication, and I grew up reading that. It used to be called the NOAA News, and then became this fun, punny name, Albinism Insight. Get it? Insight. It's so creative. I love it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So I knew I wanted to do something, and I did like to write. And so I kind of marched up to the editor of the magazine, and I was like, I want to be part of this. How do I write for this magazine? And her name is Rita Jackson. She is an icon in the community. I love her so much. And she was kind of my entry point into the advocacy space. And it started in my own community. And later on, I had different kinds of writing outlets. I had a blog for a hot minute. And I just thought it was a really important work to tell our stories. Often, when people meet us in real life, we're probably the first people they've ever met with albinism or even some kind of functional vision impairment. And so it's a lot to educate people, but it's just important work. Otherwise, no one would ever know. And I constantly get inspired by my best friend, Casey, who has done a lot of advocacy work, and I'll let her talk about that. But she is a really passionate advocate, and it makes me want to continue speaking out and sharing our experiences. And I'm really, really glad that we get to do that with our podcast now.
And you do, again, a fabulous job with the podcast. I learned things about photophobia and light sensitivity from your most recent episode that I didn't know. I had made wrong assumptions. So thank you again. Casey, can I ask you the same question? Was there a moment, was there an experience that sort of launched you into what it is you're doing now for albinism?
I don't know if I can pinpoint it back to an exact moment, but I've always been passionate about advocacy ever since I was really young. I think living with albinism, like I said earlier, there's so many misconceptions, and I would get frustrated about people not understanding. I would get frustrated that, and it's not anybody's fault that they don't know, you know, but I would get frustrated that no one was educated. I think people in schools should be educated about disabilities, and I'm really passionate about the general public learning about different disabilities. And I think it's getting better. Like, I think online advocates especially are doing a great job because we can reach a lot of people online. But yeah, I started making YouTube videos when I was about 15, 16, just alone in my room at home, just grabbed a camera. And that was kind of where it all began. And I just, like I said, I just have a passion for it, and I can't stay quiet. Like, I have a hard time, like in comment sections, not trying to educate all the time. And I'm like, I can just be a person and I don't have to educate all the time, but I enjoy it. So yeah.
I am very much like you, Casey, where I have a hard time keeping it zipped. I'm surprised I don't get myself in more trouble than I do. But similar experience for me. But before we talk about me and talk about Dave, Kristina, can you hear us over there?
I can hear you, yeah. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly now, yes. Did you hear the question?
I did hear the question, yeah. I don't think for me, like Casey, I can't pinpoint a day or a date, but for me, it comes from, so when I was growing up, I have two sisters. Both of them don't have albinism. I'm the middle one. And although my parents took me to albinism events, we never talked about albinism at home. And as an adult, I kind of look back and I refer it to, we never talked about the A word. It was always like the elephant in the room. And I grew up kind of feeling like it was my fault and it was a dirty word, and albinism wasn't cool. It wasn't something, my parents brought me up to be just like my sisters, which was great in some respects, but in other respects it wasn't, because I wasn't like my sisters and I did need a bit of extra help. And I felt really lonely. Like, although I went to events and I saw other kids with albinism, it's like this thing, and I don't know if you guys can relate to it. Sometimes you can, when you go to an albinism event and you see people who are like reading their phones and they're like that up to their face, it's like you look at them and you go, oh my God, that's me. I do that. I must look like that. And when I was younger, I didn't like to see how people perceived me. I could see other people with albinism do the things that I do, and I didn't like seeing it because it made me feel really uncomfortable and it made me feel really ashamed. And I got to a point where I was like 21 or 22, and I didn't want that anymore. I didn't want to feel ashamed, and I felt like, why should I feel ashamed? And I didn't want other children to be growing up having all those kind of feelings of guilt and feeling that it's embarrassing to have albinism. Like, I don't want that, because kids from an early age should embrace it, because once you embrace it, that's the key to cracking albinism. Once you embrace it and you understand who you are and that you can be proud of who you are, that's when you start to feel good. And so my motivation and why I started doing what I was doing is because I didn't want anybody else to be lonely and feeling sad like I did when I was growing up.
You are all speaking my language. It's like you're taking bits and pieces from my life and sharing them, and it's so meaningful for me, and I would guess other people listening, because it's so relatable. Everything that you've said, each of you, I relate to a piece of it. Absolutely, and 100%. I am so glad that you guys are here to share these experiences, and we're going to keep it going, but we're going to say goodbye for now. I can't thank you guys enough for sharing and being so open.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Enjoy the rest of International Albinism Awareness Day. Okay, so Dave. Dave, that was relatable for you, right?
Oh, so relatable. I loved what Kristina said there about not necessarily wanting to see ourselves reflected until we realize how important it is to see ourselves reflected. It changes your mindset. That it no longer says the pressure is on you to develop self-confidence because you're doing something differently. You now understand there's a collective or a critical mass of people doing something differently that allows you to be accepted by other people, not simply taking the journey by yourself.
So well put, Dave. I'm here on this journey with you as well.
Yes, we sure
But
are.
we're going to take a break on this journey. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to have another really exciting guest. We're going to talk to IK Arrow from Under the Same Sun, an international organization that fights for the rights of people with albinism around the world. So we're going to take a break, and while we do that, enjoy Outtacontroller.
I think about it every day. The scratches in my wall. When I'm dreading the day when you go away. 'Cause it's happening too soon. It's happening too soon. It's happening too soon. Oh, it's all going away. I think about it every day. The scratches in my wall. Like a cheap guitar, I can't stay in tune. 'Cause it's happening too soon. It's happening too soon. It's happening too soon. Oh, it's all going away.
Welcome back to Low Vision Moments and the International Albinism Awareness Day celebration. We are coming to you live. I'm Jennie Bovard. This is Mr. Dave Brown. We are in Halifax at the Lighthouse Arts Centre. Dave, we have talked about a lot already.
Oh my gosh, you've already crammed so much in. By the way, I felt so uncomfortable there. I started applauding, sort of forgetting maybe you're not supposed to applaud in a studio environment.
It's okay, the band was really good.
Yeah, it just brought it out of me.
It's a compliment, I'm sure. But we've done a lot. We've shed some light on what albinism is. Not too bright, because you know the light sensitivity, right?
Well done.
But we have another guest that I'm really excited to chat with. A whole new perspective. We have IK Arrow, and please correct me, IK, if I'm saying that incorrectly. IK is a former United Nations independent expert to the Human Rights Council. Currently, she's Director of Human Rights Advocacy at Under the Same Sun. She's based in beautiful British Columbia. Welcome to Low Vision Moments, IK.
Hello, glad to be here.
I have my co-host Dave here with me, and we are both really curious, and we're asking each guest, because everyone has a slightly different perspective. What does International Albinism Awareness Day mean for you?
Wow, I don't know where to begin because I was actually in the room when the resolution got adopted, and I supported that process, including the ambassador who brought it forward. Rest in peace to him. And yeah, he passed away in a terrorist attack. It was the ambassador from Somalia. So we can find allies in strange places. And we never knew it was going to get through. And when it did, I knew that something fundamentally was going to change permanently for people with albinism around the world. It's an opportunity to not only speak about our challenges, but to highlight our beauty as part of human diversity and to do whatever the heck we want to do that we never got a chance to do as people who oftentimes try to hide from being noticed.
Wow, you were in the room. That is such a historical moment. That must be such a special memory for you.
Oh, absolutely. It was because there were countries who abstained from voting for the resolution, which is very strange, including Tanzania, where there's been attacks against people with albinism. They abstained, and some other countries, neighboring countries that were their friends. And it's a lot of politics, but we found out later that they didn't like certain wording in the resolution, but it didn't matter in the end because the next Albinism Day, the first one, they had the biggest celebration in Tanzania, and the whole stadium was filled with people, and the president of the country showed up. So despite all this, hurdles, you can call them, we still got the day, we still got what we wanted out of it, and it's been very special for people with albinism around the world. Yeah.
And this is the 10th year, and it's a celebration, but it's a celebration, right? There's been a lot of progress. We've seen a lot of change over the last 10 years for people living with albinism around the globe, but there's still so much work to be done. And you work with Under the Same Sun, an organization, it's an international organization based in British Columbia, and I've been following their work for years. You do such incredible work. Can you tell me about what the main priorities are right now for the organization?
The organization has two key priorities, which is to educate people with albinism about themselves, but also through the formal education system in many parts of Africa, particularly in Tanzania, because we realize that once you're educated with albinism, nothing can stop you, especially in countries with low resources and little understanding about the condition. The other thing we do is we educate the public, and public means everybody, especially government. So we go right all the way from grassroots leaders, mothers and fathers, all the way up to the United Nations, the African Union, European Union. So we do advocacy so that one day we will not need organizations like Under the Same Sun, and instead people with albinism will be speaking for themselves in their own countries, holding their governments to account to protect them as needed or to give them the services as needed. So it's a long journey, but we've seen a lot of successes, and we're beginning to see the results. Like children with albinism recently were at the African Union advocating for their own guidelines of protection. Children who were attacked 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and now teenagers are in their 20s and speaking for themselves. So the dream is beginning to become a reality, and we're feeling very privileged to have a front row seat to that.
It is difficult to hear about the violence and the trouble that certain people face in parts of Africa, just simply because they have albinism. And we haven't talked a lot yet about the sun and protection from the sun and the effects of being exposed to the sun. It's preventable. The sunburns, the medical issues, the skin cancer that comes along with it, it is preventable. Is there an initiative right now going on to make sure that people have access to sunscreen and what they need to be protected from the sun?
Yes, thanks for bringing that up. The United Nations expert right now is pursuing an initiative with the World Health Organization to put sunscreen on the essential medicines list. Once sunscreen is on that list, then governments have to purchase it as a matter of course and make it available. So countries have to purchase some standardized crucial medications such as antibiotics, or in some countries antimalarials, or ARVs for people with HIV. So we would like that medicine to be on the list, and that would make it available to many countries where sunscreen is not standard. Like I can walk into a store in Canada now and get sunscreen for like $10. But in some countries, especially in the global south, sunscreen can be as expensive as $10 and some people make $20 in 1 month. So buying sunscreen is a huge luxury and it shouldn't be. Whereas people with albinism are dying from skin cancer. Skin cancer is actually the #1 killer of people with albinism, especially in low resource settings. So, and some of these countries are not low resource settings at all. They're just poorly managed economies. So we are very strong. We come strong against those governments and try to get them to act. But right now, we want the WHO to start from the top so the governments can follow. So if people want to join us to ask the WHO to do this, we invite them to go online and sign the petition. It's very easy to do. It's at africaalbinismnetwork.org/petition. You can also go to Africa Albinism Network on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter, X. And you can sign the petition there as well.
Wow, I can't imagine not having access to sunscreen on a daily basis. And for me, in my day-to-day life, it's a budgetary thing. I literally have to work it into my budget, but I can't compare it to that experience that you just explained. So that's such an important cause, and I will be signing off on that for sure. We are going to keep you around, IK, because you're going to join us for a discussion on institutional change, and I think you're going to lend a lot to that conversation with all of your expertise. So I want to thank you for informing us about this important initiative and what Under the Same Sun is doing, and thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you. We'll
talk to you in just a minute. Dave, when it comes to sunscreen, what is your budget like?
Oh, this was a stunning revelation when you think about the resources that have to be devoted for sunscreen. Mm-hmm. Like you said, it's part of the budget. It's part of the process. I know that I'm going to be spending, let's call it $20 to $30 a month on sunscreen products, but to think about access, quite literally the word access to sunscreen being denied for so many people around the world, it speaks again to this more holistic picture that you're trying to paint today with this series of guests.
I feel very fortunate that I can budget to purchase the sunscreen that I need. So yeah. All right, well, let's hop around the world again. We are going to be talking next with, Dave, you and I, international models. Just like us, our next guest is no, I'm just kidding.
Maybe you a little bit more than me.
But for real, our next guest, who's joining us from Holland, Netherlands, Xueli Abbing, is a very successful model, even having graced the pages of Vogue magazine. In 2011, Dave, the BBC published an article about Xueli in which she shared her story, really open and honest discussion about her life so far with albinism, and it put a really great focus on albinism. That article was translated into several different languages and it went very viral. I actually remember when that happened. After that happened, that the following year, Xueli actually became the UNESCO Goodwill Ambassador for the fight against racism and discrimination. So I feel like we have all of the most important people here with us today to discuss these topics. She's also the chairperson at the Open Eyes Foundation. Xueli, thank you for joining me today. Dave and I should say.
Thank you so much, and I'm very sorry about the coughing. I'm a little bit sick, but I'm very happy that I can join your show.
Well, I hope that you feel better soon, and I understand that you have also just wrapped up your own podcast episode for International Albinism Awareness Day. I wonder, how did that go, and what did you discuss?
Well, it went very well. It was not a podcast show, but we did wrap up some great celebrations for International Albinism Awareness Day. For example, the Dutch chairperson of the National Committee of UNESCO was attending this event, and also a dermatologist and a doctor who knows a lot about DNA was attending to explain what albinism is. to persons in a room with and without albinism.
I think that's so important to have those educational opportunities, Xueli, because I mentioned earlier to another guest that I listened to one of their podcast episodes and I learned things about light sensitivity, about photophobia that I didn't know. I had wrong assumptions. I thought if you had brown eyes, brownish eyes, some persons with albinism they don't necessarily have blue eyes. Some have hazel or some color in their eyes. And I assumed that their photosensitivity, was less than mine, but I was very wrong about that. But not to talk too much about light sensitivity and remind myself, don't look directly into the lights, Jennie. You have an impressive resume. And you, as I mentioned, you are the chair for the Open Eyes Foundation. What is it that you do at Open Eyes Foundation?
So we do a lot of things. For example, we are making podcast series. I'm making my own podcast series on racism and discrimination, and of course the discrimination of persons with albinism. I'm also organizing exhibitions. For example, today we opened our exhibition to show the differences of persons with albinism in gender, ethnicity, but that we all have albinism and that albinism makes us unique.
Albinism, we haven't mentioned. It happens it occurs in every race, in every ethnicity. I've even seen plants and animals with albinism. And let me say, the animals with albinism are possibly the prettiest animals out there. So I don't know what that says about us. I think I know.
I mean, albino alligators, majestic animals.
The peacock, though, with
wow,
albinism
yeah,
is so cool. But let's not get too off topic.
Way off topic.
You know, I could talk about bugs and animals, but Xueli, we've got you here. I want to know from you, as someone who has, modeled internationally, who has graced the pages of magazines, you've really put yourself out there. I haven't experienced representation like I have in my adult years, like I did when I was younger. And I think for me, it could have made a really big impact seeing other people in media and in fashion and portrayed in a flattering light. I didn't see enough of that growing up. But for you, why do you think it's important to have representation of real albinism, not fake albinism, but real albinism? Why is it important in modeling and really everywhere?
Well, if you see the fake albinism, persons are going to think it's a real albinism, and that will help with increasing the myths against persons with albinism. So to fight that, we have to show what albinism really is, meaning that we as society have to show persons with albinism, give them a platform to speak about their disability and what they can do. So I think it's very important because I myself was abandoned because of perhaps because of my albinism. We do not know that for sure, but I was abandoned when I was 8 months old in China. When I was 3 years old, I was adopted to the Netherlands. And they think, so some people in China think that persons with albinism bring bad luck to their families. So having albinism for some Chinese people is kind of bad luck. You're not seen as a person, but more as a problem. And to make sure that persons with albinism are seen as persons, we have to show that they are persons.
Thank you for being so open about your story with us, and really always whenever I see anything about you online, you're just such an open book, and it really does help. I want to thank you. Also, you're going to stick around. We're going to have a larger conversation here in a second about institutional change. And so why don't we jump right over to that? We're going to talk about institutional change, and that's a really big topic. We're going to invite a few more folks in here with us. Before we get to institutional change, Xueli mentioned myths and misconceptions and I mentioned fake albinism. I just want to say that these myths can creep into your life no matter where you live. You could be like myself in a plane over the Atlantic Ocean, and a man on this plane might ask you what your magical powers are. So it is a problem, and it's pretty much everywhere I go. So
that's an awkward conversation on an airplane.
It was.
Oof.
It's a bigger, longer story, but it is in an older podcast episode called "What Did You Just Say to Me?" So if you want to go back and listen to that, but I'd like to chat more with my guests about the institutional change that that we have accomplished and that still needs to happen when it comes to living with albinism. So Xueli, you're still with us, just for our other guests, so that everyone knows everyone. Xueli is the Goodwill ambassador for the Goodwill ambassador for the fight against racism and discrimination. She's an international model and much more. She has a very impressive resume that I won't get to entirely. IK Arrow, you're back with us. You're joining us from BC, from British Columbia, Canada. We met you earlier, and you are the Director of Human Rights Advocacy at Under the Same Sun. Robin Spinks, welcome to the conversation. You are just joining us from Edinburgh, Scotland, and you work as the Head of Inclusive Design at RNIB, the Royal National Institute for the Blind. Thank you so much for joining the conversation, Robin.
It's a real pleasure to be here, and lovely to see friends old and new as well. So terrific to be celebrating and marking International Albinism Awareness Day. Lovely to see you all.
Dave and I have been talking about how this year marks a decade since the launch of International Albinism Awareness Day, and the theme the UN has dubbed for this year, the theme is A Decade of Collective Progress. And I really like the theme because it's really thought-provoking. We've done this a lot already today. We've talked about how far we've come and the work that's yet to be done. So what I really would like to do in this chat here is sort of dive in the current state of affairs and where we have to go. So Robin, I'd love to start with you since you're new to the conversation. What is your current take on the state of inclusive design? Where are we now?
Well, we've seen lots of progress in some quarters in terms of digital accessibility, the advent of smart glasses, the embedding of accessibility in mobile platforms, lots of great stuff happening, but a whole lot more to do. And you only need to venture out into society and a typical day where you're greeted with touch screens, which are very visual. And if you can't see too well, you end up peering at them. So, you know, for people like us, really, we want to see quite big changes where, you know, touchscreen-based devices that are in the public domain are all accessible. So we're doing a lot of work really to try and create some tangible change there. But also in traveling around, we want the passenger assistance support systems to become better. Banking, retail, you know, really across every part of society, there's a real force of positivity and optimism to create change that builds inclusive design into the design spec for products from day one, because it's much easier to design and build a product that's really accessible out of the box than to go back and retrofit and remediate and change things. So, you know, we're really trying to get people to jump on board with that mindset of integrating the thinking, integrating the principles of inclusive design from day one, yeah, because you end up with a much better product. And there are some really encouraging things happening. There's a huge thrust of multimodal AI following on from the generative AI we saw last year that's really starting to create opportunity. It's not without its challenges, but it's a really super exciting time, I think, to be in this space.
I think it is. All the things you just mentioned are very exciting. And you mentioned something else that jumped out at me, Robin, and that's out of the box, right? There's this There's this
Yeah.
perception that access and inclusive design they're extra. It's extra work. It's added, and it is if you only think of it after the fact, right? When I think of
Yeah.
inclusive design, I think of like a dimmer on every switch,
Oh.
a high contrast stripe on every stair. Those are my
Yeah.
dreams. But there's some
Just
really
imagine, yeah, just imagine the difference it makes, you know, having the step nose edges marked, having the glass manifestations on buildings marked. And of course, you know, we're having this conversation at a time when globally there are really interesting trends in construction, like steel and glass. There's a fixation of steel and glass among a lot of architects and developers. That's great, but how about some ability to darken the windows, either electronically or through a simple window film? There are so many things you can do that make the environment better for people like us, and just allow us to have a more positive, more integrated, more productive time. And it's all about communication.
I'm so glad that we have someone in a leadership role like this who's talking about darkening windows. Thank you so much. I have hope for the future yet, based on what you've said, and because someone like you is in the role that you're in, Robin. Thank you so much.
I also just take the opportunity to mention this book, which is called Real Lives, Personal and Photographic Perspectives on Albinism. It's been around for a little while now, but if people haven't seen it, that's a really, I think, a fascinating study. It was fascinating for me as a co-author, working with Dr. Archie Roy to create it. But do take a look at it if it's something you haven't come across before.
Thank you. I have not checked that out, and I definitely will. IK, over to you. And with all of your expertise in the area of human rights and advocacy, you've really already given us some really great examples of sort of policy in action. But I wonder if you could pluck something out from the last 10 years that really stands out as an example of progress that we've made.
If I may, I'll just make a comment to what Robin said first, and I'll jump right into your question. And these are friends on the screen. I know Robin and Xueli, and so it's a pleasure to see all of you on this platform. When I was hired by a huge bank in Canada about 20 years ago, I was one of the few people with a disability, visual disability there. And the computer that we're using was like those MS-DOS, really small screens from way back when. And it turns out that most people were struggling with this, but they didn't speak up. But I couldn't work with it, so they gave me a large screen. But guess what? After they saw me using the large screen and saw the system was compatible with that screen, everybody changed. The entire bank changes computer system. And it's so all of this to say that many things that are inclusive design are beneficial to everyone, right? So it's usually people think they're helping us, but they're actually helping themselves, their grandmothers, and when they have disabilities. But in terms of what has stood out to me in the last 10 years, it's very hard to choose. So I'll just be very brief and mention that having like the UN have this issue on their agenda is key to protecting those whose lives are in danger because of albinism, because it happens. Having the African Union also have a disability protocol, which is a law binding on member states of the African Union, and that law mentions albinism. It's the only disability group mentioned in that law. And I would add that action planning have been happening across several countries. This is like a process of developing an action plan to protect people with albinism and to give them access to education and health. So that's also very useful. At least 10 countries in Africa have this now. And finally, globally and in Canada, I think people with albinism have been adding so much richness to the conversation on equity, diversity, and inclusion, especially among people of African descent, Black people, because my whole family is visibly Black, and now people now have new conversations about what color means. Why do we treat certain people a certain way because of their color? And why do people who already face discrimination based on the color of their skin treat people with albinism very differently? So it's opening up really interesting, multi-layered, multi-dimensional questions about what it means to be human and what it means to be discriminated against. So it's adding to our common humanity and our shared humanity. Albinism is really leading that conversation in some ways.
Xueli, how do everyday people, how can we raise awareness around albinism and influence change for people with albinism around the world?
I already see a lot of change going on. Still, there needs to be a lot of work done, but we are on the right path. I think it's important that people with albinism are given a platform. So for me, I give persons with albinism a platform so they can tell their stories, and that indirectly and directly helps me in my life. So to make buildings more accessible. So by listening and by also acting, because I see a lot of persons, they want to listen, they want to help persons with albinism, but then they forget the conversation. So I think it's important also to act upon your decision to help persons.
Thank you so, so much. Dave, did you want to add anything?
I just think when you're talking about design, there's so many ways that you can benefit many people. For myself, sources of light can be very irritating. And as someone who spends time in hotel rooms traveling, you get these thermostats that are modern and designed and supposed to be great for everybody because of they light up and they have big fonts on them. But then the lights don't go away. You don't have the option to turn that light off, and all of a sudden the thermostat is shining down on your bed all night. So it goes to think that when you're talking about that universality in design, there are a lot of boxes to check to make sure that everybody is included in those decisions. So yeah, tinted windows on building, give me tinted glass, and
dimmer on every switch.
A dimmer on every switch.
Thank you all so much for coming by. I am in awe of all of your expertise and experience, and I hope you keep doing what you're doing. And thank you for having this conversation today.
Thank you
so much.
It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Dave,
Jennie.
it's time for another song.
Oh, heck yeah.
Because we are heading into our next break, and when we come back, we're going to dive right into more conversation. We're going to have more voices, and it's going to be a lot more fun. But for now, let's take a break and enjoy Outtacontroller.
Out all night and never home. Stabbed the ferry all alone. Since red, clenched tight. You're gonna cut deep tonight. And every night. Oh, in your cheap leather jacket. Cheap leather jacket. Cheap leather jacket. Cheap leather jacket. Out all night and never home. She's down by the ferry all alone. Since blade clenched high, you're gonna cut deep tonight. And every night. Oh, in your cheap leather jacket. 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 Cheap leather jacket.
Welcome back. It's Low Vision Moments. It's a special International Albinism Awareness Day celebration with my co-host, Big Bad Dave Brown. I'm sorry, Dave.
What is that?
Slipped out. It's your new nickname.
Is that your way of saying I'm doing a bad job as your co-host?
No. I couldn't do this without you, seriously. I'm so glad that you're here. It has been an awesome conversation so far. I honestly have so much hope for the future. There's been so much talk about community, about coming together, and about really incredible things to look forward to
Wins.
in terms of design, in terms of the initiatives to get people the basic things like sunscreen, which I'm never going to ever take for granted. I'm gonna keep reapplying, and I'm gonna keep using the resources that I have, because it's so hard to hear about those stories. But we are moving along. We are moving to the United States again. And we're going to chat with a really good friend of mine. I think she's a good friend of mine. I don't know if she considers me a friend, but I love following her online. I've been following her for a long time. And Jennifer Renee is joining us from New York, New York. She is an inclusive beauty influencer. She's a performing artist and a former jump rope coach. She's a visual artist as well. Pretty much anything Jennifer touches becomes more beautiful. And like I said, she's in New York, New York. She was my first guest ever on the Low Vision Moments podcast. And so you hold a special place for me and this podcast, Jennifer. I'm so glad that you're rejoining me here today.
Thank you, Jennie. I'm glad to be back.
We talked about getting mistaken for other people in our episode. Getting recognized was the name of it. I've been mistaken for a Paralympian, various Paralympians, more than once. I worked at a public pool once, and they had a photo of a Paralympian who had albinism on the wall, and so many times people assumed I was her, and it took, number one, convincing that I wasn't her, but number two, I always forget to ask them to pay for an autograph and a picture. Like, what a missed opportunity.
Think of all the sunscreen you could buy.
That's right. I could donate right? We could donate to the appropriate cause.
Charitable operation opportunities.
So Jennifer, I'm asking everyone this question, and we're getting a lot of really thought-provoking answers. For you, what does International Albinism Awareness Day mean?
Well, what it means to me is really putting the focus on educating people that aren't aware of albinism, and especially in those communities where people with albinism are at risk of, being harmed, or they don't have the access to the resources that they may need for education or employment. That's what it means to me the most. And then also just celebrating the contributions of people with albinism around the world, like just all the different successes that we have and achievements that we have.
Dave always tells me that I'm one of the most sporty, active people that he knows. And I don't know if he knows this about me, but I have not always been that way. I've not always been a runner or a goal baller or even much of a team player at all. But I have evolved a little bit. And for me, it took a lot of trial and error to figure out what activities, whether physical or not, like what activities can I enjoy and participate in, either because they're outside, it makes it more challenging, or just to participate fully and feel like you're having a good time like everybody else. You are a jump roper, a former jump rope coach. I want to know, how the heck did you get involved with jump rope? Because that's fascinating to me.
So that all started back when I was in first grade in elementary school. We had a jump rope team, like a performance team and a competitive team. And I just remember always wanting to do what everybody else was doing. And also that I would often hear people telling me, you can't do that. So, and I just never really understood it when I was young. Like, why can't I do that? I didn't understand my vision or anything like that. But I think a lot of adults had fears about me getting hurt or, just whatever fears they had. So I just always try to do things. And I taught myself how to jump rope. I taught my friends how to jump rope. And then I made the team. And we performed all around Indianapolis. That's my hometown. And we also got to perform at the regional championships. And we performed in the parade, like the Indy 500 parade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we did a lot of very cool events. And that's part of the reason I also got involved in like performing arts is like I was always performing since I was very young. But yeah, I just picked up a rope and that's how that got started, really.
I have to say that jump rope, like single by myself jump rope, was one of the activities I really enjoyed as a kid. It was really like the freedom of movement was just, I don't know, it was really cool. And it was sort of where I first discovered that I like to challenge myself, like set a little goal, like how many times can I do it without messing up? And when I tell people that I play goal ball, they're always like, oh my God, don't you get like hit in the face with the ball? Like, don't you get injured all the time? And I'm like, nah, it's fine. You get used to it. You learn how to protect yourself. But when I think about jump rope, I think about like the double ropes, and I think about all getting slapped with those things. And that really freaks me out too. So I did shy away from the like the double Dutch type stuff, but I think that's incredible that you're able to do so much with that and really sort of put yourself in a performance sort of situation where you learn that that's what you enjoy doing. Have you tried? I know that you try a lot of different things. I think that you're like me, and you like to try all the things and see what you enjoy and see what sticks. I know that you've tried blind tennis, and I'm really curious, what other sports and activities have you tried, and do you have a least favorite?
So growing up, yeah, I feel that I was very active and I tried a lot of different sports. I actually went to sports summer camp, so we did everything like kickball, softball, soccer. And I realized I really don't like ball sports because it's hard to track the ball. So I feel that's why I really focused on jump rope, was because I had more control over just myself and the rope, and not having to, deal with other things flying around, or, I broke my thumb playing soccer because I didn't see the ball coming towards me. So yeah, and I played basketball. I really did enjoy basketball. And I also did like martial arts. I did taekwondo, karate, and last year I was doing jujitsu, which was a lot of fun. And then blind tennis was something that I tried more recently as well.
See, I knew you would have tried all of the things. What advice, Jennifer, would you give to someone who is struggling to find their thing, who's struggling to find an activity or a sport that they can get into and enjoy?
Well, I mean, it doesn't hurt to try and just see how it feels. Like, for me, once I tried and I realized, this isn't my thing, or this didn't work out the way I thought it would, So it's okay to try and then just decide that it's not for you, or that you really love it. And, if you find that there's challenges or barriers in that, see if there's a way to accommodate it for your vision. Like, as far as blind tennis, I don't know how new that is. I know that it is like a worldwide sport, but it's not very big in the US yet. But the way that they adapted it was to make the tennis ball bigger, and it jingles when it bounces. So, and they also use, I believe they use larger rackets, or the kid rackets or something like that. And then they have a smaller court. So it's not, you don't have to cover as much space when you're hitting the ball back and forth. So I just thought that was very unique that they found a way to adapt the sport to people that have less vision. And then finding out about all the other types of sports and the league USABA, or the organization USABA, that supports people that have blind, low vision to be athletic.
The United States Association of Blind Athletes does so much to create those opportunities. I'm a little envious. I'm not going to say anything about our organization in Canada. They do a great job with goalball, but it just goes to show that there are so many opportunities out there, and sometimes it's about going outside of your comfort zone. Sometimes it's about trying the thing a second or third time, because when I first tried goalball, I hated it. And then I tried it again, and I loved it. And I discovered this whole new world of community and sport. So I knew that you would have tried all the things and you'd be able to shed some light on what it's like to go out there and find your thing. So Jennifer, you're an artist and you're going to stick around and chat with us a little bit later when we get into entertainment and performing as people with albinism. So thank you so much for chatting, and we'll talk to you in a little bit.
All right, thanks.
Dave, we're going to move from jump ropes and goal balls. We're going to put those away.
Okay.
Okay. We're going to put those away, and we're going to move to a different kind of gaming. We're going to take out the tech.
Ooh.
How are you with video games? What's your take on video games?
Oh, okay. I'm a 40-year-old man who still absolutely adores playing video games. You can frequently find me sitting very close to my television screen, playing my Xbox. I am a nerd through and through, and I love it, and I'm proud of it. And even though I should probably spend more time socializing with my friends.
Well, we're gonna get into that, because there's sometimes community, friendship, human connection. Sometimes you find that through different kinds of gaming. And I think you and our next guest, Danielle. Danielle, welcome.
Hi.
It's so nice to see your face on the screen here. Danielle Moulds is an accessibility consultant. She's a content creator. She's a gamer and a former guest on the podcast. You were on the episode called Games People Play. And I need to, first of all, before we talk anything about gaming, I don't know if this is going to be about gaming or not, but I think that you have some tea that I really need you to spill. You've been alluding to a big announcement online. I follow you online very closely, and I need to know, what is this big announcement?
Oh my goodness. My big announcement was that to celebrate Pride and to celebrate getting back to Twitch and being on Twitch almost 3 years, I have been working on some graphic designs for some merch. There is a merch website.
Oh, that is so exciting. Is this this is tied to your streaming account?
Yeah, it is. We did a lot of things for Pride this month as well that I am super pleased with. My community is just full of people with pride and just so many wonderful queer people who identify that way, and I love it so much.
I can feel the love. I can feel it just as you speak. It's so nice. Dave, you can feel it.
Oh, I can.
It's getting hotter in here.
Totally feel it.
In our episode, Danielle, we talked about the rise and fall of my love of video games. I used to love a good first-person shooter, your Quakes, your Dooms, your way back in the day, your Commander Keen, and obviously the Marios, and I still play Tetris. I think that's the one that I've never gone away from. And then I dabbled. They became too realistic for me, and that's when I said, no more video games. This is frustrating. I can't tell if that's a bush over there or someone that I need to be wary of because they're on the opposite team. Like, it just became too much like real life, and it wasn't fun for me anymore. But I know that that's changed, and there's lots of access features. I also dabbled in Dungeons and Dragons, and I wish I had more time to take up that hobby. But I don't think that a lot of people think about community and human connection when they think about gaming, and especially video games and maybe role-playing games. I have found a lot of connection and community and using my imagination in those role-playing type games and Dungeons and Dragons. Can you tell me about your experience as a person with albinism in that space and the community that you find there?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So, of course, I've run across some of the funny things, and as a woman and as someone who puts themselves out there and maybe looks a little different than what people are used to seeing. Of course, I've gotten some of the interesting comments. I mean, I've been called things from grandma to Gandalf. And
I'll take Gandalf.
Yeah,
I'm just
someone
kidding.
said that to me. And I was like, do you think I'm not going to take that as a compliment? But yeah, I learned to really embrace that. And the thing I've found that once you start embracing those parts of yourself, and once you stop letting the things people kind of throw at you, thinking that it's gonna be, I don't know, an insult, and you embrace them, you become the most authentic version of yourself, and that attracts such beautiful people to you, I think. And my community has been the highlight of gaming for me and the highlight of streaming.
I couldn't agree more that there's so much power in just owning and leaning into your identity and not giving the power to the people who want to say things to you. Like calling you Gandalf, yes, I would take that as kind of a compliment because I'm a bit of a Lord of the Rings fan.
And isn't that like the top wizard? Isn't there no better wizard than Gandalf? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's the community really that jumps out at me when you describe your experience there. And Dave is a gamer. Mm-hmm. I am not. But for the people who, like me, are not really in the loop, what should we be playing right now? Where are the best access features? Where are the best accessibility features in gaming right now? What should we be playing?
There are some huge AAA titles out there like Forza, Horizon and Motorsports, Spider-Man 2, of course, The Last of Us, Part 1 and Part 2. There's so many things like that out there, but even just recently, there was a whole showcase for indie games called the Accessibility Showcase, where they got to feature developers who were focusing on adding accessibility features into maybe currently being developed games, already developed games, or older games even, which is just so cool to see.
Oh, there's so much hope for the future, Dave.
Oh, can I second the thought on Forza, the racing game with some of their accessibility features? I used to find racing games to be impossible, too fast, never knew where I was going, the next turn baffled me. They've started putting some guidance arrows on the screen that are color-coded with more haptic feedback as you're moving around. It makes the games so much more playable and pick up and play, which is one of the greatest things you can be as a video game.
I think you have me sold. I need to block time off in my schedule to get into gaming a little bit more. And again, just so cool to hear about the features. Thank you, Danielle, for sharing your exciting announcements and sharing your experience with gaming and the community that goes along with it. I'm still feeling the love over here. And you're gonna stick around. You're gonna join us for another conversation later. As a group, we're gonna talk about albinism in entertainment and the arts and all of that. So look forward to chatting with you again in a minute.
All right, bye.
All right. Well, we have another little break coming up, Dave. No video gaming. We don't have time for you to sneak away and do any of that. But we do have a really special treat. We have a music video from our next guest. Our next guest is RobenX. RobenX is a rapper out of Tennessee. I believe I got that right. And we're about to see a video from RobenX for the break. It was recorded live, actually, for International Albinism Awareness Day back in 2020, and the song is called Pure. So we'll be right back after this video.
The world has got you down, and the world has got you down, yeah. One step leads to another, you can't live your life in the gutter. Well, even when the world has got you down, gotta find a way to turn around. I want to be pure, shine a light for another. I want to be pure, find a way to turn around.
Your heart ain't stopped, your blood still runs through veins. Why do you wanna leave? It's you as a human being. No one sees you're exhausted, no one has when you spread. Why get them satisfaction of watching you walk away? Dying is freaking easy, living you have to pay. Invest yourself in the pain, stubborn, rubbish, lose yourself to the pain. You're still breathing, able to fight again. Trials and tribulation, trapped inside of this pain. Purpose you have to change. How you gonna make a difference when you just stay in the same? Riches too freaking high, better rock trying to climb to a mountain and build a plane. Blessings don't come so easily when you want to a dream. Always someone that's hungry or waiting to eat it. said it would be easy for you to have you a dream. Understand all your fears, they reside inside of me. Speak for the better you, this is what you can be. I'm just a stupid kid who had a stupid dream, but I made myself the purest, the legend who'll never leave. Throw me in a pool of sharks and I promise the sharks will bleed. Look inside of my eyes as the storm turns.
One step leads to another. You can't live your life in the gutter. Well, even when the world's got you down, gotta find a way to turn around. I want to be pure, shine a light for the mother. I want to be pure, find a way to turn around.
My heart ain't stopped, my blood still runs through veins. Maybe I'll never make it, maybe I'm just a statement to little boys and girls. Sadly, they are mistaken. Money don't make you pure, killing don't make you real. What was inside their soul? Real as they in here. Tell me the truth, the pieces. If it's sad, then it's real. Truly thrown in your street until muscles dripping that fear. Lines are blurred, my skin is burned. I still abide straight from the blood. Warrior still in chain, craving the urge to win. I fought many your battle, lost my soul to the devil. Everything that don't matter, you stripped me, kept me from all of my happiness. I've been fighting you, fighting you. Still won't let me rest. There's blood on battlefield, praying that I get killed. Please don't won't let me rest. It's blood that I'm gonna spill. Yelling through four walls, crowded through four walls. It's crazy how many died at the hands of these four walls. Just an adolescent, when packed in a prison, private perception, accepted the deafness and depression. I know exactly what that can cause. Little with battle scars of the people, it killed them all. But the pencil was not a sword. Message wasn't delivered. Hate didn't develop temper. Bullet had hit her higher. Mama would have lost her son. Tell me about coincidence. Frankly, I don't believe in it. We're all here for a reason.
One step leads to another. You can't live your life in the gutter. Well, even when the world's got you down, gotta find a way to turn around. I want to be pure, shine a light for another. I want to be pure, find a way to turn around.
1, 2, 3. I am power. I am pure. Living bliss. I am sure. Unafraid. Won't back down. I'm the king on the ground. They thought I was down. I bounce right back. I get through hell. If I can take that, then you can't stop me. You can't shake me. I am a one thing. Break it, break me.
One step leads to another. You can't live your life in the gutter. Well, even when the world's got you down, gotta find a way to turn around. I want to be pure, shine a light for another. I want to be pure, find a way to turn around.
That felt pretty.
Welcome back to Low Vision Moments. It's the podcast all about those sometimes frustrating, potentially embarrassing, but often pretty comical things that happen when you're going about your day with albinism. And today we are celebrating albinism with International Albinism Awareness Day. It's the 10th year and we are having a heck of a good time here today. I can't swear, we're live.
Wait, has that been hard for you? Are you struggling with that?
Let's not talk about it.
Okay, sorry.
Let's not talk about it. But that music video is just it's energy like personified. I cannot wait to talk to our next guest. Our next guest is RobenX. He is a musician from Memphis, Tennessee. I did have it right.
You did
it is
get
Tennessee.
it right.
My memory is serving me well at times. He's been busy performing with the Extreme Tour, and he is selected this year by the United Nations as their champion for International Albinism Awareness Day. What a delight to meet you, Mr. RobenX. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So your real name, I hope it's okay if I share your real name, it is Robadarius Brown, and RobenX is a stage name, an alter ego. I would love to know, who is RobenX and where did RobenX come from?
RobenX is what I would consider to be an amalgamation of all my influences. And he would be someone for me who could help everyone. He would be me if I was smarter, if I was faster, if I was stronger. He would be like Spider-Man to Peter Parker. He would be like Malcolm X to Malcolm Shabazz. He would be the answer to the questions that I had. And that was born from a need to make myself feel stronger where I was extremely weak because of bullying, obviously, due to our skin condition that we have going on here.
I love that you mention all those superheroes because I think RobenX sounds like a superhero name. So I would totally lean into that if I were you. Maybe get yourself a cape. But you're also meeting my alter ego today. And people who know me well know that this alter ego of mine is the version of me that doesn't swear every couple of minutes. So we are
same.
we are meeting one another's alter ego today. You've been really open in sharing your story. You've been in the news. You've spoken in schools. You've spoken all over the place about your experience with bullying, and I am so proud of you for doing that because that is not easy to do. I still struggle with talking about those experiences, and I would assume I'm a lot older than you are. So you've come a long way, and you're such an open person about your experience, and I understand why, based on your description of why you do what you do. But I would really love if you could share some wisdom with anyone who is currently actively being bullied because they are a person with albinism. What would you say to them?
One of the first things that I had to realize once I was overcoming it was how you carry yourself and what you believe you are. That's how you project yourself to be to other people. I would start first with self-love and accepting myself because that's the only thing that you can control in the outcome of all of these things. The first order of business would be to accept that your hair is white or it's a different color. You're pale. That's never going to change. These things about you aren't going to change. Once I realized that, I was like, oh, I'll give these guys something to look at. If they want to look at my hair, I'll spike it up. I'll make it all curly. I'll give you something to look at. You're going to stare anyway? Fine. Here's a show. I'll dress the way that I want to dress. If you're going to stare at me anyway, I might as well look good. So I would start there. I would start in that inner place. And I would start watering your seeds because that's the fight you can control, and look and watch on people's faces how they change.
You're almost removing the power from them. You're taking their intention to hurt you and just totally flipping it on its head. And I really resonate. That really resonated with me when you said, yeah, if you're going to look at me, like I might as well give you a show. And for me, it's, growing up, it certainly was like I had a lime green blazer that I love to wear, and today I'm wearing a loud floral blazer, so I guess not much has changed. But it's also an opportunity. If I go to the hair salon, I take that as an opportunity because I know everyone is they're looking at me. They want to know if it's my real hair color. They've got questions. All eyes are on me when I go to the hair salon. And I take that as an opportunity to talk about what's happening in Africa and the real issues that people elsewhere are facing with albinism. Like I do it with humor sometimes. I will say, hey, if you keep those hair clippings on the floor, those make big money on the black market. And it sounds insensitive, but it's a way to start the conversation and introduce the conversation. And I love what you said about accepting yourself first, and then it just blossoms from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly it. I'm a big fan of dark humor too. I mean, this pinky goes for 10,000 on the right market. I mean, really. Yeah, my platform is all about that. That's why we wrote the children's book, The Colors of Oli, was to tell a story about accepting people for all of their differences, no matter what. To not accept people for their differences is to live in a world of black and white. There are so many different avenues to talk about this, and my music is a platform that I use to spread awareness about albinism. We're also talking about mental health, or a new record that I'm working on titled EMT will tackle a lot of what's going on in the world, from Palestine to Congo to the government here in the States taking away the rights that we have as humans. that sort of thing is what my platform is built on. I want to be the voice for the people. I live and die for the people.
How did it feel for you to be selected as the champion by the United Nations for this year's International Albinism Awareness Day? What was that like?
I mean, I'm in shock because this is something that I mentioned when I was a kid. Like, I was a teenager. I had a girlfriend at the time, and I told her, I was like, "Oh, dude, I'm gonna work for the United Nations. I'm gonna start my own movement. I'm gonna like do all this cool stuff." And she looked at me with the same look you would give a child when I'm like, "I'm gonna be a ninja." You're like, "Yeah, you are. Yes, you are, my little ninja." I was serious though. I knew my goal. So to be a humanitarian champion for the United Nations is it's like a dream come true. And it's like I told you I was gonna do this. I meant it with my heart that I would do whatever I could to save this world.
That's beautiful. And I'm so happy that you got to realize your dream and that you're out here putting yourself out there for all of the right reasons. We are going to keep you around. We're going to move into a group discussion, and we're going to talk a bit more about what it's like to be in the arts and entertainment and performing when you're a person with albinism, because I had a lot of hesitation in putting myself out there. I always wanted to be behind the camera, but here I am. So we're gonna dive into that conversation, and Dave, I expect that you'll have a lot to share on this topic too.
This is 100% my field, right? I've been working in the media industry for a decade and a half now. I was a high school theater kid back in the day. I used to do all kinds of stuff. I'm so interested in the intersection of albinism, disability, entertainment, media. This is the food that I love to consume, Jennie.
Well, Dave, I'd love to start with you, but let's first get everybody introduced. I do want to know how you got here with me today. And but at first I want to reintroduce our guests here. We have a couple of familiar faces. RobenX, of course, is still here with us. And we have Danielle Moulds coming back. She's our prolific gamer. She's our accessibility consultant and lovely person overall. Jennifer Renee is, we met her earlier as well, and she is an inclusive beauty influencer. And like I said, she is an artist through and through, performing artist, visual artist, former jump rope coach. Everything she touched just turns more beautiful. I meant it when I said it earlier. And I'm going to start with you, Jennifer, and then Dave, we'll get to you. But I really want to hear from Jennifer about what it was like, because you're the first inclusive beauty influencer with albinism, and to be the first in anything, it can be scary. It can be rewarding as well. But what was the experience like for you diving into that space?
When I think back on it, I know growing up, it was just a concern that I had, that everywhere I looked, I didn't see anyone that looked like me. I liked flipping through magazines and watching music videos, and I just never saw a person with albinism. So I always wondered about that. It's like, where are they at? You know? So I would write to magazines and write to TV shows and the producers and everybody, like, hey, can you talk about albinism on your show? And I would get callbacks from these producers, and I didn't always get invited myself. Sometimes it would kind of launch an opportunity for someone else to be on the show. So I was involved in a lot of that back in the, I would say, late 90s. Yeah, it's a long time ago. But yeah, that's one thing that and then also for myself, just I enjoyed performing, and I used to want to be a singer. I mean, I still do music, but probably not as intense as I used to. And I love to be on stage, and I always felt different on stage than just my everyday life, because I was a shy kid and everybody was always looking at me and staring at me, but I felt like I was on top of the world when I was on stage. So I just felt that there should be more representation of people with albinism, and that I wanted to be a part of that. But as far as like beauty influence, because I kind of forgot the question.
That's okay. I rather enjoyed your answer anyway.
Oh.
But you can certainly add.
Getting into the beauty influencer space, it kind of just happened. It really wasn't something planned because there was no like influencer stuff when I got started. It was more like just people sharing things that they like. And there was blogging back then. And I kind of created it just for a platform where the ladies could come together and get some tips on makeup because I didn't know how to do my own makeup and I had to experiment with all these different ways. And I just felt, oh, hey, I'll just share this with my friends. And it kind of evolved from that. But I think because I had that experience in performing arts, I had the confidence to be able to share those things.
Makeup is hard. I'm just going to acknowledge that. It is a skill. I have learned a lot from you, and I just want to let you know I completely forgot my magnifying mirror when I showed up here today. There is no magnification mirror in my dressing room, so we winged it today. And I literally thought about some of your videos when I was trying to do my makeup today. So thank you. Now, Danielle, you're also, you're a content creator as well, and you are a streamer and you share your experiences online. What are your hopes and dreams when it comes to that? What do you want to come of all of those amazing things that you do?
Oh man, there's so many good answers to this, but I think the biggest one to me personally that means the most to me is that I would love to be the person that I needed as a kid because I spent so much time feeling very alone and very isolated as a kid. I didn't know anyone with albinism anywhere near me. So to get to have the opportunity to hopefully be just a person, an authentic person, just trying to live my life and sort of put that out there for people, and to hopefully be that person for someone, that person that I needed, I think that's my biggest hope and dream.
I'm a loss for words because that was so well put. And I'm thinking about when I finally found a community, and it was really only in my 20s when I joined goalball, and the whole blind sports experience really sort of it really increased my self-confidence in a way that I didn't even know I needed. But putting yourself out there as a performer it's not something that most people are comfortable with. And we've acknowledged along the way that we stand out naturally. And Robin, you made RobenX, Robidarius, you made a really good point earlier. When you said, if I stand out, I might as well, put a show on. I might as well use this to my advantage. But for you, RobenX, Robidarius, starting out, what was it like putting yourself out there on stage? Did you have any challenges with that, any hesitation? And if you did, how did you deal with it?
I've always been a person who decides to conquer fear the moment that it uprises. I used to have a terrible fear of heights growing up, and there's a bridge that goes over an overpass near my home. And I would just go up there, and I shook the first few times I walk up there to the point where I crawled up there on my knees, but I would sit until I was done shaking and came down. And eventually I stopped having a fear of heights. So when it came to performing and things of that nature, performing came the easiest. Being in front of cameras became the easiest thing because I conquered a lot of fear myself. I did the hard part, which was say, look at me. So I was pretty much ready for that. I think the only problem is the lights sometimes. I mean, when you're sitting in news, you're sitting in news stations or you're on these huge stages, there's just the lights are all over the place. So I typically try to either focus on the crowd or find a point of reference out there. Also, I love what Danny said about pleasing the inner child. A lot of this was for Rob Darius as a young man, and trying to build him up through RobenX. I accidentally just became RobenX on accident. So, yeah, it's those type of powerful moments for me that made it easier.
What about you, Dave? How did you get here in front of all these bright lights with me that we need to get Robin Spinks on the whole lighting thing? But how did you get here?
I mean, my love for media started at a young age with a Sony Walkman, listening to the radio at night, well past my bedtime, underneath my pillow, much to my parents' chagrin. But the notion of performance, I did not like who I was as a teenager. I had very little self-confidence. I was really struggling with identity, whether that was disability or just general adolescence and what a lot of teenagers go through. But what theater and performance gave me was an opportunity to build confidence while quite literally wearing a mask. It was easier to be confident as Nathan Detroit or Matthew and Anne of Green Gables and let my charisma develop and grow and build confidence through performance. And now fast forward 20-something years later, I can be my authentic self in a media and talk show space, but I never could have been where I am today if I'd not learned how to be charismatic behind a mask.
I think there's something also. Sure. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Rob Darius.
Oh no, I was saying yes. I totally agree with him. That was like perfect.
I think we all agree with you. But all I was going to add is that I think that there is something to be said about finding happiness outside of your comfort zone. In my case, I was the kid making all of the neighborhood kids perform skits, and I was in charge. I was like, no, you're delivering your line wrong. Here's what we're doing. And I had always had an interest in like storytelling and entertaining people. And I used to make fake radio shows. That was my jam. So I really enjoyed those things sort of naturally growing up. And then I wanted to get into like drama, and I wanted to get into performing in the school setting. And I had a lot of reservations about that because I assumed that I wouldn't get cast in any particularly flattering role. I wouldn't be taken seriously. And so I really just shied away from it, and I decided I would like to be behind the cameras. I would like to go to film school and study film and TV production and work behind the scenes. And that was a big smack in the face when I learned that it's really difficult to get it. It can be difficult to get into the behind the scenes part of the industry when you are tripping over wires and you don't know if things are in focus. So I'm glad that I found my way, and I'm so glad that all of you are out here as representation. Rob Darius, Danielle, Jennifer, you are like Rob Darius said, you're speaking to the kids coming up now, and you're speaking to the people out there that maybe we're the only ones in our school with albinism. Maybe we're the only ones in our whole city with albinism, and it can be really isolating. So to see yourself in those roles and performing and doing what you love, it is making big changes. You guys are doing great things. So I want to thank you all for what you do. And before we wrap things up, I would like to hear from each of you. We'll start with Rob Darius, and then Danielle, and then Jennifer. I'd like to know where everyone can follow you online. How can we get your content? How can we keep the love going? Rob Darius,
For
you
sure.
go first.
I'm like RobenX everywhere. I made it really simple. So just RobenX. Also, we have The Colors of Oli on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and anywhere you guys would like to purchase books written by yours truly. If you want to know what's going on in the music world, RobenX on iTunes, Spotify, and teamrobenx.com for all the things RobenX.
Danielle, what about you?
I'm Danny Marie AUC. AUC stands for Albinism Up Close. That's sort of the website I run. But yeah, I'm that everywhere pretty much. Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, all of the places. So
Awesome, thank you. I'm going to keep following all of you online. Last but not least, Jennifer, where can we find you online?
My social media is at JRenee, JRenee, and that's JRENEE, JRENEE. It's the same everywhere.
I thought you were about to sing us a little song. I was getting into that.
Right.
You all are awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the Low Vision Moments podcast. I hope to have you all on individually again. It's been a great celebration with all of you joining. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Dave, we're nearing the end of our celebration, my friend.
Already?
Yeah.
My gosh,
Is there
time.
anything we didn't touch on that you think that we need to touch on?
Well, I try to read between the lines when you get to hear from so many compelling voices over the course of a couple of hours. And maybe the word that didn't get nailed down on was platform and the importance of platform, whether it's in the international relations space, whether it's in the inclusive design space, whether it's the entertainment space that we've spent the last little bit talking about. The notion of platform and representation really matters. Maybe oftentimes in life, you or I will be the first person with albinism somebody in the general public meets. But this
I can tell.
Yeah, yeah, you can certainly tell. But
there's a lot of staring. Sorry.
But no, but you nailed it. But I think a lot of these conversations flipped that concept to be a reminder that oftentimes you might also be the first person with albinism that another person with albinism meets. And that is a concept that I think until you live it or until it's drilled home, you lose sight of, you lose consideration of. And that's where this platform, your amazing podcast, fits into play, where a lot of other people who you featured today, their work fits into play. Maybe I'll brag about myself for a second, and where my platform comes into play. But it's a reminder of not just educating the general public, but also paying it forward to future generations or people like me who only really started grappling with their albinism identity in their 20s or 30s or 40s. Everybody's journey is different.
The word albinism identity is something I've only started talking about recently, and I'm really leaning into it. And today has been so special for me. I mentioned earlier that when I go to goalball tournaments, there's like a sea of blonde hair. The people with albinism are mistaking each other for the other people with albinism. There's so many of us in the space, and this is similar to that, but in a bigger way. This whole celebration that we've had today, and I want to say that it makes me feel not special, but that's not a really articulate way of saying it. Albinism is rare. Again, we're like 1 in 20,000 in North America and Europe. But when we have such a roster of incredible people that have joined us today who all live with albinism, like I feel it's so normalizing, and I feel not special in the best way possible. Does that make sense?
For once as millennials, we don't get to feel special, and that's a good thing.
There's no award today. We are not handing out any participation awards. But you get the co-host award. I want to thank you so much for being here and co-hosting with me. I can't believe our time is up. We could probably keep going, but we won't because we have other things to do, I guess.
I would love to have dinner with you. You know, don't leave me here too hungry.
Okay, well, I won't leave without you.
Okay, beautiful.
But before we go, I want to thank all of the people listening and watching. You are why we do this, and I hope that you, whether you are someone that lives with albinism or not, whether you know someone with albinism or not, help us with the awareness piece. Let's demystify this thing. We're not special, but we are. On International Albinism Awareness Day, maybe we are a little bit special. I want to say a thank you to a bunch of people that made this podcast and this special possible. Mark Aflalo is our technical producer. Ryan Delahanty is our podcast coordinator. Andy Frank is manager at AMI Audio, and a bunch of amazing people that I can't see behind these lights, but I know that they're here, have made today possible. So we couldn't have done it without you. It's been a blast. I want to say thanks to Laura Kirker as well. She's over across the pond, and she helped make today a reality. The Lighthouse Arts Center, this beautiful space that we're in. And until next time, Dave, you're not special.
And I can live with that reality. Happy International Albinism Awareness Day, Jennie.
Thank you. And let's hear the band play. Enjoy Outtacontroller.
People saying I can never do better. Well, who you living for? When everybody puts you down, it's time to come alive. Come alive. Come alive. Are you still here? You still can. Come alive. Am I ever gonna get it together? You always have before. People saying I can never do better. Who you living for? When everybody puts you down, it's time to come alive. Come alive. Come alive. Are you still here? You still can. Come alive. Come alive. Come alive. Are you still here? You still can. You still here. You still can. Come alive.
Thanks, guys.
They wouldn't let me get up and dance.